Jack explains his strategy in a letter he writes before he leaves the house. Jack intervened in time to save his sister Lily, who had attempted self-destruction after their mother passed away due to mental illness. Jack had hoped for her to be discharged to family physician-supervised home care, but she was placed in an asylum and is not permitted to have visitors. Jack, who is desperate to save her, chooses to act insane in order to get committed to the asylum as well. He leaves the note behind as insurance. He begins by cutting his hair really short, getting some cuts, and smashing the mirror. After that, he walks around in public shirtless, swearing and making up stories about monsters as he runs into people. Before he leaves the house, Jack is brought to the asylum and escorted to see Dr. Janetti by a guard named Charles, who carries him away on a stretcher. Despite feeling lightheaded from the medication, Jack continues to maintain his act by saying more absurd things. Janetti determines right away that Jack must remain under strict protection, and Charles shows him to a designated hallway where numerous dangerous individuals are housed in cells. As he explains that one of his neighbors is the notorious Mark, who killed several girls and kept their bodies to perform the dirty work. Charles ties Jack to his bed. Charles enters the cage to assist Mark after noticing that he is throwing up blood as he is leaving. Jack realizes that Mark has revealed he has a blade, so he yells a warning. Charles escapes after successfully defending himself and shutting the cell once more. The other inmates in the cells begin to shout as Mark angrily rants at Jack for thwarting his escape strategy. After a while, Janetti determines Jack is stable enough to be admitted to the mental health unit. Following Charles' removal of Jack, Janetti comes up to Mark and discusses a remedy known as Orpheum before giving him a gentle tap on the head to keep him still. Nancy, one of the nurses in the psych ward, begs Jack to hold on while she completes his paperwork. As soon as she enters a different room, Jack starts observing the other patients. He goes over to the woman he thinks is Lily, but it's actually Heather, one of the patients. She's friendly and hands him a piece of paper. She screams out of the blue, saying Jack is trying to take advantage of her. Nancy returns right away and threatens to take Heather upstairs to get her to stop talking. Nancy then gives Jack a tour of the area while outlining the guidelines. Loomis attacks her at that same time, choking her until she lets go of her panic button. Dave picks this up and gives it to Jack so he can push the button. Before long, Janetti arrives and, in a few succinct words, forces Loomis to release Nancy. After that, Loomis is tased by Charles to be taken upstairs, and Janetti declares a lockdown. Jack pretends to fall asleep as Nancy leads him to his room. He immediately looks out the window to see if he can get out once she's gone. He opens the closet after hearing a disturbance, and Dave is there. He says he just wants to make sure Jack's eyes are not insane. Jack notices that Mark had white eyes, and Dave verifies that this is due to the Orpheum modality. Jack notices a flickering light on the ceiling as Dave describes Orpheum takes place upstairs in a lab. Individuals who receive care there return considerably changed. In the laboratory, Loomis is electrocuted by Janetti till his mouth foams. Vera, the helper, switches off the equipment and chastises Janetti for pushing it too far, but Janetti insists he is proficient in his craft, and requests that she get Loomis ready for a dose of Orpheum. Janetti becomes enraged when Vera declines, injecting Loomis while explaining how Orpheum could benefit the patient's minds. His eyes light up at this. When Jack eventually spots his sister in the garden the following day, he goes to the common area to wait for her. He approaches Lily, who scolds him for coming right away, claiming that she is just as sick as their mother, and that she doesn't want to be healed. Lily yells during an altercation and is sent back to her room by a nurse. Heather notices all of this and is intrigued. Later on at the cafeteria, Jack stealthily slips a spoon into his pocket when no one is around to see it. Unexpectedly, Heather comes up to question him about Lily. Additionally, she yells at Jack to come to her room in the evening, but he ignores her. As Jack and Dave sit down, Charles soon joins them and reminds Dave of their agreement. Dave has to take some medicine for him, on the off chance that Charles will report him. Following Charles' departure, Dave urges Jack to keep his secret in exchange for a pledge not to disclose to others that Jack is not truly insane, as he has determined from Jack's acting normally in private. Heather is forced to undertake filthy work with Charles that evening, when he breaks into her room. Charles silences her by saying that no one would believe her when this is happening on a daily basis. Jack tries to collect bits from the bed with a spoon in the meantime. He tries to open the window with those components the following morning, but he fails and cuts his finger in the process. Later on in group therapy, Jack tells the story of his mother's illness and the several brain surgeries that were performed. Loomis' hand continues to bleed, causing him to collapse to his knees and twitch as he stares at the blood. As another patient with white eyes licks the blood on the floor, Loomis leaps on Jack against the nurse's orders to return to his seat. The nurse pulls out her panic button as the males fight, but Loomis bites her palm to stop her before she can touch it. Chaos ensues. After Loomis is knocked unconscious by Charles Taze, the nurse orders everyone to their rooms and declares another lockdown. Since both Jack and Dave concur that Loomis desired Jack's blood, Orpheum is more than just a medication. Later, Jack asks Janetti to meet with him and to fetch his letter from his flat. They locate the letter, but other than a few words, the page is blank. Swearing he is not insane, Jack goes berserk and accuses Janetti of tricking him. Nevertheless, Janetti simply tells Charles to take Jack to maximum security. Jack screams and fights his way there in vain. He gets yelled at by the other patients in return, and Mark tells him he wants retribution. After several hours, Jack starts to feel as though he's truly losing his mind. Jack returns to acting insane and apologizes for his earlier outburst when Janetti stops by to see how he's doing. This gets him permission to return to the psychiatric unit. In the afternoon, Jack wants to explore Orpheum and asks Dave to teach him how to sneak around like he does to steal medicine, but Dave says no. When Jack exits his room that evening, Dave surprises him. He's had a change of heart and consents to teach Jack how to move covertly, but he won't accompany him upstairs. Together, the two cautiously navigate the building, dodging Charles, and Dave shows Jack how to enter an office where he snatches medication, while Jack checks the desk and takes a security card. Charles enters at the very moment, but the two are able to conceal in time. Charles glances around before hurrying off. Jack then opens the door and goes upstairs using the security card. Jack may easily continue moving around without being noticed because Charles is preoccupied with his phone and isn't paying attention to the security cameras. When he finally arrives to the isolated ward, he examines every room's window and is shocked by the insane people's intense reactions. A few doors later, he runs into Lily, who begs for assistance after witnessing her neighbors being affected by the trials and apologizes for shouting at him the prior time. Sadly, Jack had to flee after hearing Charles approaching. Jack arrives at Janetti's lab via a maze of passageways, including ones with the highest level of security. When he discovers a cage and realizes that Loomis is inside attempting to harm him, he recoils in shock. As he searches more, Jack discovers a bottle of Orpheum, which he takes with a scalpel. Then he hears voices, so he has to hide. Vera enters after Janetti and notes that Orpheum is proliferating within the patient's body. Janetti explains that Orpheum is more than just a medication as he snaps and shoves her up against the shelves, tying her up. According to him, it's actually nanotechnology, and it's acting according to his programming. Janetti dismisses Vera's warnings that Orpheum is changing and may spread while receiving an injection for himself. Subsequently, he inflicts a gash on her leg using a scalpel, and her agony is so intense that he begins performing dirty work with vigor while Loomis looks on. When finished, he gives Vera the task of locating the mutation that controls it. Subsequently, Vera teases Loomis by dripping blood all over her fingertips. Jack appears like he didn't get any sleep, so Heather makes fun of him the next day. Ignoring her, he walks over to show Dave the Orpheum bottle. He conceals the bottle in his fist barely in time to elude the nurse, who is coming to take off his tag. After that, Jack leads Dave outside and requests that he take Charles' keys in order to save Lily. A patient with white eyes, who has found a cat, interrupts them. He proudly displays the animal to others before abruptly beheading it, so he can consume it. As the two flee in terror, the man grabs Dave instead. As soon as Jack pushes the man to save Dave, he is attacked. The other patient sees the body of the cat to eat while the two guys struggle on the ground. Charles, thankfully, shows up and tasses the man unconscious. Jack experiences a terrifying nightmare that night that includes violent mad individuals, his mother dying, Lily trying to kill herself, and strangely altered bodies. Jack storms into the common area early in the morning, kicking a table and demanding to see Lily. He becomes enraged when the nurse informs him that Janetti and she are upstairs. Jack screams at her and points out her white eyes, but the nurse insisted it was simply a side effect from Loomis' bite, thus it was normal. Although she thinks of sending him upstairs, Nancy returns him to his room and shuts the door. Vera, in the meantime, pushes food via a secret hatch to deliver it to the patients at the highest level of security. Mark says he likes his meal better when it's alive and tosses his dish to the floor. Jack jumps on anyone who comes into his room that night, but it's only Dave who has managed to take Charles' keys by placing sleeping pills in his drink. While Vera tries to feed Loomis, Lily, who is tied up in the lab, pleads for mercy as the two make their way upstairs. She tries to poke him with a stick while he's sleeping, but it falls. Vera tries to take it back, but Loomis grabs hold of it and fractures it so he may suck the blood. Vera pulls back and loses her limb as Lily cries for aid. In order to stop the bleeding, she ties her belt over the ensuing stump. Janetti walks into the lab at that point, furious at Vera for endangering the entire effort. When Vera calls him out on his attitude, he simply responds that she didn't give a damn because she wasn't the victim. In order to treat her, he ties her to a bed in a different room. He is thrilled to see that the infection is spreading as he takes a sample from her arm. Subsequently, he searches for Charles but is unable to locate him. Nonetheless, he spots Jack and Dave on the surveillance cameras. He tries to get in touch with Charles, but she conceals the radio and he's sleeping in Heather's room. Jack and Dave keep scuttling through the hallway with the highest level of security. Jack declines Mark's invitation to work with them as a team. Janetti loses his temper and short-circuits the electrical, causing the doors to the maximum security area to open just as the nurse arrives to check on Vera. Jack fights off all of the dangerous patients as they emerge, while Dave fumbles with the door until he manages to open it. The two enter the other room and use Charles' taser to short-circuit the lock, sending the patients reeling back with a jolt. Subsequently, as they begin to flee, lethal patients pursue them. When they finally arrive at the lab, Jack needs several minutes to handle the lock. Just as a patient is about to catch them, the pair opens the lab door and enters, locking it and breaking a patient's fingers in the process. Jack then runs to untie Lily, who affirms that Janetti hasn't given her an injection yet. Vera is receiving care from the nurse for her wound in the interim, but at that point she finally loses it and begins to feast on it. After returning to Jack's group, they exit the lab and must now get through the highest level of security to get to the stairs. There is a lot of blood and bodies from the patients, who were slain by those with white eyes within the cells. When they open the door at the end of the hallway, they discover it is blocked, indicating that it is a trap. When the infected patients emerge from the ceiling, Lily and Dave use tasers on the patients as Jack tries to use the wires from the lock to start the elevator. They begin eliminating adversaries, and if they bleed out, other patients consume their wounded allies. Lily is suddenly approached by Mark, who begins pulling her away. Fortunately, Dave punches Mark in time to save Lily. After using the elevator for the last time, Jack joins the battle and is nearly slain by an enemy until Lily tasses him in the mouth to win. Mark follows the group, keeping the elevator door open, as they scramble to enter. But Jack uses the scalpel to stab him in the chin, causing the elevator to close. After arriving at the mental unit in a matter of minutes, Jack destroys the elevator's control panel to prevent anyone from tracking them. After discovering blood all over the place, Jack begs Dave to keep Lily safe while he looks into it. He investigates a strange sound and unlocks a bedroom door to see Heather consuming a lifeless Charles. As soon as she spots him, she starts to follow him. As a result, Jack moves aside, pushes the other patients aside, punches Heather, and flees. Jack goes back to Lily and Dave, and they block the door before he leaves as other patients pursue him. Nancy notices them in the reception and panics, hurling a chair through the glass, but she calms down when she learns the trio isn't contaminated. She leads the gang to the kitchen, where they find a different exit and obtain some knives for self-defense, eager to get away too. A patient suddenly leaps at Jack, but he is quickly overcome and stabbed in the face to death. More patients soon show up, and as a result of all the stabbing, there is a bloody brawl that breaks out in the kitchen. As the heroes make their way through the kitchen and eventually arrive at a rear door, which they make sure to lock before climbing the emergency stairs, a number of patients are slain. They eventually locate an office and attempt to find a phone, only to discover an infected nurse in place of one. She said that while Janetti is trying to find a solution, everyone needs to wait. Nancy stabs the nurse to silence her when she screams at her for leaving her station. The group rushes to Janetti's office when Nancy then remembers he has a gun. After Dave pulls a sword from the wall, Jack unlocks the desk drawer and discovers the revolver in his actual letter. They pursue a blood stain they see on the floor as they leave. The nurse attacked Nancy at that very moment, when she broke through a door, only to be fatally stabbed by Lily. After that, as they dash through the recuperation area, they come into Vera, who explains to them how to utilize the laundry chute to skip the stairs, and about a secret passageway in the lab. Vera requests euthanasia before they go in order to prevent herself from becoming into a cannibal as well. Vera dies after receiving an injection from Nancy. Searching for the laundry chute, the group breaks into a run to escape more patients entering at this point. Nancy is attacked by an infected cleaning woman, who jumps on her and bites her neck when she opens a door. Jack checks on Nancy, who is regrettably already dead, before rushing to shoot the woman down. A laundry chute is discovered by Dave and Lily, who begin to climb via it, while Jack continues to shoot incoming victims. When Heather arrives, Jack tries to shoot her, but realizes he is out of ammunition. Rather, he pushes her out before entering the chute himself, which prompts Heather to pursue him. Jack succeeds in stabbing her, and forcing her to fall after a brief battle with her hands. The group ascends further and emerges in a highly secure area, where the infected patients have consumed one another. Unexpectedly, Mark gets in their path, and uses the previously used scalpel to assault Jack. Before the males can even begin to fight, Lily throws Mark off and fatally stabs him first. When the three of them do make it to the lab, they discover Loomis is still in his cage. Janetti shows up and takes Dave as Jack and Lily discover the hidden tunnel. He then carefully inserts an ice pick into Dave's eye to perform an improvised lobotomy. He is not killed, but his brain is completely destroyed. Janetti then tries to attack Jack with an ice pick, and strikes him with a lamp. As a result, the siblings battle to subdue the doctor. After getting a stabbing to his leg, Jack snatches the ice pick and pushes Janetti, stabbing him back before Lily puts him under a tase. Janetti has been chained to the cage so that Loomis can eat him when he wakes up. Hearing Janetti's screams, the siblings flee down the hidden tunnel. The siblings descend the steps after using the tunnel to reach the roof, where Jack drops the Orpheum bottle and it breaks. They eventually leave in the morning and roam the street until the police find them. Following their account, the police arrive at the facility, where Janetti greets them with a perfectly fine appearance. The siblings watch helplessly as a group of infected patients suddenly break out and slaughter the police officers perched atop the car. The patients ultimately flee into the wild to spread the sickness, disobeying Janetti's cries that he can assist them.